Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 32nd installment of the Galen Data Medical Device Innovation webinar series. I'll be your host today. My name is Dwayne Mancini. I'm the CEO at Project MedTech. Today, we'll be hearing from Guy Goldman, co-founder of Israel-based Olive Diagnostics, for a journey to the cloud. We'll be hearing about what Olive does, how they got started, lessons learned along the way, how the Israeli ecosystem nurtures high-velocity startups, how cloud aggregated data can inform science-driven product development, how to approach global market penetration through partnerships, and exactly what they're doing. First, a few housekeeping items and some slides on Galen Data. Galen Data is an FDA-compliant cloud for medical device manufacturers. The Galen Cloud provides a configurable platform for device-to-cloud connectivity that is compliant to FDA, HIPAA, and CE mark standards. The company is ISO 13485 certified, and the product on AWS is High Trust certified as well. Founded by seasoned medical device professionals, the company's goal is to make medical device cloud connectivity available to all at a fraction of the cost while shaving months off the development timeline. Galen Data allows medical device companies to stay medical device companies and not become IT companies. Some quick logistics here. If you have any questions throughout the discussion here, feel free to drop them in the questions section on the right-hand side of your screen or left-hand side of the screen, depending on where your control panel is. We'll get to those as we go. And there is also 3 handouts on the right-hand side as well, or left-hand side, so in the control panel. There's a Galen Data data sheet, there's a white paper that Galen Data wrote, and there's also a one-pager on Olive Diagnostics. As a reminder, you will receive a recording of this webinar via email, and feel free to follow up with any of us should you have any additional questions. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome our guest, Guy Goldman. Guy, welcome to the webinar.
Well, thank you very much. I was thinking on the way over here, there's a question I ask all these people all the time. I go, how do you know that you're there? Like, what's the event in your life that you've reached, And me being asked to come and speak on this webinar, 2.5 years ago, who were we? We were just guys with an idea on a napkin, And now I'm being asked to participate. So for me, that's a really good feeling. And it's one of those you're reaching that point.
Yeah, awesome. So Guy, give everyone who's tuning in, who will be listening to this later on, intro into who you are, and then also, kind of intro Olive and how it started, or I guess not maybe how it started, but what you're currently doing, and then we'll dive into the history.
All right, so Guy Goldman. I'm in Jerusalem, Israel right now, so it's about 6 o'clock p.m. Israeli time here. My story starts with my parents making some crazy trip from Los Angeles and deciding to move to Israel. So here's a my dad was very successful in Los Angeles, and for some crazy reason that we haven't ever figured out the real reason, they decided to move to Israel. And so we moved here, and then I did my schooling here, and then I did the military. And when I finished the military, I decided to go back to the US for studying. So I started out in Berkeley, ended up at San Francisco State. I studied computer science and physics. It was hard. I was doing both of those majors. I was working full time. It was a really, if I didn't have that military training before, I don't think I would have been able to get through that. It was crazy. But I did, and I got through it, and I stayed in the US for some time. And then I decided that technology, I have a strong affiliation to technology. I studied artificial intelligence as my major in computer science, and but it wasn't really for me, So I was programming for about half a year, and I'm like, this sucks, And I decided to move more to sales, and then from sales into management. And for the last probably about 10 years, I've kind of been like a CEO for hire. So, CEOs have a working company and it's working really well, and they have this new idea that they want to go for it, but they don't want to kill their other company. They hire me, I take over their company, I run their company, and that's what I kind of did for the past few years. Israel, as probably most of the people know, there's a lot of innovation in Israel and a lot of new companies. So in my past, I had started a number of companies, three. Two actually were good, and they were in the field of data. Um, uh, at the time, now they call it AI and deep learning, all these really cool names. Back then, it was just statistics, but we were doing statistics modeling. And so I had two small exits from these companies. I tried working for, I worked for very large companies, I worked for very small companies. It was always a problem because, I'd be in a company and I'd be like, oh, we could do this, it's much smarter, and try to push these things. And then they're trying to calm me down and just focus on what you're supposed to do. And so it never really worked, And so I think I was kind of that generation where I started skipping jobs every 2-3 years, And I think it's the
Yeah.
longest I've ever been in one company.
So when did you find Olive?
So Olive, and this is actually the reason I started Olive, and I have this thing that I say that any company that I don't know if you ever heard the name Guy Kawasaki. He's like a motivational speaker kind of guy.
Mhm.
And he always talks about when you're starting a company, make sure you're skipping over the evolutionary curve. Okay. So the evolutionary curve, an example would be emails, right? You used to get your emails on your computer, and then they move down to your cell phone, and then to your watch, and then they'll be in your glasses, and they're great. All those evolutionary things, I have all of them. I love all of them, and they're great, but they're evolutionary curves. Whenever you skip over the evolutionary curve and you do something that's absolutely different, there's always a personal reason behind it, and that's kind of where my story starts. So I was managing a really large company in London, and I was doing this 10-4 kind of thing. So I was there for 10 days, back in Israel for 4 days. My family and everyone was here, and it was great. It was fun. And one day I get this call from my mom, and I'm in London. It goes that she's been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. So, you kind of get through that shock, like, how can that be? And you jog and you run, you play tennis. How could it be they have ovarian cancer? Anyways, she did. They did a number of surgeries, and then she started, doing chemotherapy. And while she's undergoing this treatment, I don't know anything about chemotherapy, right? I just know that there's these big bad side effects that happen. And I find myself calling home like 3 or 4 times a day to see how she's doing. And I'm talking to, my brother, my sister, whoever was there taking care of her. And, I'm asking these annoying questions, did she eat breakfast? Yeah. What did she have? Toast. Did she have butter on her toast? No, she had cheese. What kind of cheese? Not like I could do anything with the information. It's just I wanted to feel that I was there and I was able to. And about 2 weeks into it, my brothers were like, listen, it's heartwarming how much you care. It's fantastic. We love it. Either come home or stop calling, but it's got to change today because you're driving us absolutely insane. So understanding that and understanding that I didn't want to leave London, I started looking into technologies because there's all these technologies out there. We're talking 2017, right? Back then, I'll remind you, we thought we invented everything possible. There's nothing more to invent. And so I start going through the market, and I'm looking for this, whatever, just something that I can put in our house. I'm not gonna have to make these calls, and nothing exists. And the best I could do was like a watch, or a band, and which is good. You get, she's breathing and her heart's beating. That's good news, but that's not what I'm looking for,
Yeah.
And she wasn't the kind of woman that's going to allow me to put like a video camera in her home. There's no way I'm going to start without it. So, anyways, so she passed. My dad passed. It was 2017. Was a pretty shitty year, and then I was like, well, wait a minute. Anyone who's my age has parents who are plus minus their age. All, what is it? 88% of people have some kind of chronic disease. I'm like, wow, there must be a real need for a device like this, and that's where it started. And I was like, okay, well, what would that device look like, and how would you do it? So we started looking into what is possible to monitor. And the underlining principle that still is in our is guiding our device is that it can't change anything in the way the person lives their life. You know, you ask my mom, oh, do you mind peeing in a cup and dabbing a stick in and looking at the different changes in colors so I can tell how you're doing? You know, she's not going to change anything in her life. She's lived for 70 something years, you know, whatever the age is. To start to change their life because you want to know how they're doing, forget about it. It's never going to happen. So the device, we understood very early on that the device has to be completely passive. And then it was like, okay, well, what are we going to monitor? Now, there's only so many things you can do passively and you can monitor, you know, so the toilet was an obvious, you know, direction. And then, okay, in the toilet, there's feces and there's urine, okay? And then I started looking into, okay, well, what's the difference between feces and urine? What has more biomarkers? And where feces is really good at kind of ejecting from the body things that it doesn't need, urine doesn't really do that. I mean, it does, but what it does is the kidneys regulate the body. And acting as a regulation, if you look very closely at how the kidneys are regulating or what they're regulating, you can tell pretty much everything that's happening in the body. So urine was clearly what we were going after. And then, okay, it's got to be something where there's no user interactive. We just want them to urinate in the toilet the same way they have their whole lives. So it was going to either be optics or acoustics, because those two things you're getting feedback from a distance. You know, either you're bouncing light off or you're bouncing sound off. I kind of felt like the world isn't doing enough with acoustics. You know, I mean, there's ultrasound, but there's not a lot of work on. There's a lot of work on optics. So I started out actually trying acoustics, but due to the kind of the material that the toilet's made out of, and resonance and stuff like that that happen as a result, we understood that it can't be acoustic; it has to be optics. And then when we started diving into optics, it was like, okay, so, you know, high resolution, speed video, stuff like that, you know, all these different options. And then what came to mind was something called spectroscopy. Now, spectroscopy is a hard word, but it's not a really hard technology, okay? Your microwave uses a form of spectroscopy. So you put your food in, you turn it on, it sends electromagnetic waves at a very, very particular frequency. What it does is it vibrates water molecules and fat molecules. And they vibrate really, really, really fast, and they create kinetic energy, and the kinetic energy creates heat. And that's how you heat up food. That's why they say it heats from the inside out, because it's heating up the water molecules, and that's heating up the food. Spectroscopy is the same principle. So you put in light waves, different frequencies of light, and each molecule has a different frequency signature. So if you send in like 1,000 nanometers, I'll just give an example, 1,000 nanometers, and you hit a water molecule, the water molecule starts to vibrate and spin around, do all these things. And what it's actually doing, it's taking the energy from the beam that you put in. So if I send in 100, whatever units of energy at 1,000 nanometers, and I hit a water molecule on the other side of the toilet, I'm only going to get 70 units of energy. Okay. Now I know how much I put in, and I know what frequency, so I know I must have hit a water molecule. Because if I hit a nitrite molecule, it'll go right through it. It wouldn't even react. So spectroscopy was the way to do it. There were a lot of barriers in using spectroscopy. Before I even started, I did my due diligence. Is it even possible? And I went to all the optic kind of heads of optic disciplines in all the different universities. And it's nice. Israel is nice because it's like this big, right? So going to all the universities took me 2 days. There were no flights. You went north one day, you went south one day, and that was it, And I spoke to these professors, and one of them takes me down to a lab, and he goes to me, "Do you even know what a spectrometer? A spectrometer is a device that does spectroscopy. Do you even know what that looks like?" I'm like, "No." So he goes, "Let me show you." So he shows me the spectrometer. It's this huge device. He goes, "This cost me $1.5 million. It took me 4 years of grant writing to get this thing. You put the test tube, or it's called a cuvette. It's like a square test tube. You put that inside this box. You put the box in the machine. You shut the machine. It's completely silent from any noise around, and even then we have noise problems, coming in from the electrical radiation and stuff like that. He goes, and you want to put this on the side of a toilet. Do you know how much noise you're going to have? There's something called SNR, which is signal to noise ratio. So your signal to noise ratio is very, very low. So you have a very, very small signal and a bunch of noise. So it's like going to a football game, right? And your friend who's sitting, 4 rows in front of you and 2 to the right, he goes, hey, you want a beer? And you can't hear him because all the noise around. He said it, but you can't hear it. So you have to be able to like strain out all that noise so you can hear him. So they were like, so everyone was like, no, it's impossible. So, 2 or 3 said, yeah, maybe it's possible if you do it fast enough or whatever, you might be possible. And I go, okay, great, that's fantastic. Let's move forward. Now the urine is moving. Well, get out of here. It's impossible. And it doesn't have any geometrical shape. So all spectroscopy, classic spectroscopy, you use in every equation, there's the distance that the light traveled in the sample. Okay. Here you don't know what the distance is. You urinate enough drops. Some of them are round, some of them are square, some of them are triangular, hectagons. You got all the shapes, and you don't know how big the drops are, and they change all the time. So, anyways, no one believed that this would be possible. But I did have two equations, and I was like, okay, I understand all that. That's fine. But with these equations, why won't it work? I mean, the equations say it should work. Why won't it? And no one can give me an answer. This guy just worked 4 years on this freaking grant, and now I'm going to make a spectrometer for $50 and put it on a toilet. Of course he's not going to try too hard to give me an answer to this problem. And so, kind of empirically, it seemed possible, and that was enough for me. And
Wow.
if the physics says it should work, it should work. Just figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, I on our Project MedTech podcast interview a ton of entrepreneurs, and it's you learn. I love talking to entrepreneurs because what you learn about the process they went through to form their company is so integral for people who are going through the same thing. And when you stack them up over time and go, okay, wait, he was really successful, she was really successful, and then you start to compare and contrast, you start to realize the similarities. And something that, I just wanted to kind of highlight here because it was so evident is how much you focused on a problem and then how to solve the problem. Because sometimes that is missed from entrepreneurs, or they don't talk about it enough still, right? They identified a problem, they moved on to the solution, and then they forget how important that problem was, and they fall in love
Mhm.
with the solution. And that's very easy to do, right? You can hear as you're talking about the science, and I'm a recovering chemist, so this is all right up my alley. And so when you talk about that, it's very easy to start falling in love with the science and how you're doing it, but if you forget about that problem, it's how you get off on the wrong path, right? So I just wanted to highlight that because I love how much time you spent discussing what the problem truly was. Um, so you found the company. Where's Olive Diagnostics at today? And I think as you tell that story, I'd really love to get um, maybe the focus on, we kind of talked about the science here, but also the focus on cloud connectivity here, right? Because without this, it really doesn't work, right? Because the whole problem is being able to monitor this. So maybe kind of walk me through that piece of it.
Yeah, let me, if I can, just share, just so people
Yeah.
see what the product actually looks like.
Yep.
Um, Let me just see how I get this done.
Yeah. I mean, candidly, I'm intrigued by this product as well.
Okay, one sec.
Yep. Yeah, we can see the screen.
I don't know what screen you're saying.
Just your desktop.
Okay,
Yep.
my desktop. What about if I do that? Okay, one sec. We had it working just a second ago. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second to, who uses this thing? Yeah. Here we go, show screen. Okay, I'm almost there, guys.
Yep. No, you're all good.
Okay, are you seeing that now?
We are seeing it.
Okay, so we kind of designed 3 different designs, but we're going after this one in the middle. So this is the device itself. Okay, it comes with a toilet seat and cover. So just that you take off those 2 screws that hold the toilet seat in the back of your toilet. You take those out, you put our screws in, and you set the sensor down on it. Okay, it's got buttons on the side so you can easily release it if you want to wash under. And then it comes with a cover on top that's also easy release. So if you want to just take off the seat and cover, you can do that as well. This thing in the front is a motion sensor. So for the most of the time that the device isn't working, it's sleeping most of the time. And then from time to time, it will awakes if someone gets near it. Okay. And then what you don't see is on this side right over here, we have a LED array. So we have 64 different LEDs. Each LED's a different frequency. We span from 365 nanometers, which is like the high UV, all the way through this SWIR and near to 2,500 nanometers. So it's a very large range spectrometer. That in itself is revolutionary because most spectrometers only have 1 zone of light, and we span all of them. And then in the back, we have photodiodes. Photodiodes are they just read how many photons are going through, okay? And we have 6 of them in the back. The reason we've done that is because men tend to urinate when they stand in the back of the toilet, anywhere here in the back. And so we cover about 95% of the toilet seat by doing this. So that no matter where you urinate in the toilet, we're gonna pick up the signal. Okay, there's a battery that goes in on this side, and the battery lasts for about 3 months on average. Obviously, if someone uses the toilet 25,000 times a day, it's gonna not hold for 3 months. But on average, it should hold for 3 months. And again, it's part of that. It's supposed to be completely passive and non-invasive, so someone doesn't have to charge the battery. You know, those watches are great, but you have to charge them every other day. You know, it's a pain in the ass. So the idea is to have it so it lasts. This is our next version of the product that's coming out to the market. Okay, and the difference between the two is this one sits on top of the toilet, where this one fits into the toilet. Okay, that way the people don't have to connect it to the back. They just clip it on. It's called the K-clip. Okay, and all the principles are the exact same. The motion sensor in the front and the 6 photodiodes in the back, except that it sits inside instead of on top. So this one's going to come out a little bit later, probably in 2024. Okay, and that will get us into where we are right now. I don't know how to stop sharing.
Super cool. There you go.
Okay, I got it.
Very cool, very cool. So that's on the market in Europe then.
So yeah, so the product is CE certified.
Yep.
Okay, and this actually brings us also to cloud computing and Galen and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But let me just start from where we are. So where we are, when I was managing product on our company before I hired someone to do that for me, I had a very strong motto that every 2 weeks we had to show significant progress in something. I don't care what. You know, we've managed to screw the screw in better. Fantastic. You know, everything every 2 weeks. So I have shareholders. I've got skeptical shareholders. Does this thing even work? Is it possible? You know, and we'll talk about the ecosystem in Israel and how we even got started. But so I've got shareholders. I've got all these people that I have to report to, and I have to continuously show progress. You know, so when I was managing the product, you know, if the light went on, continue. You know, don't worry, does it go on exactly the way we wanted it to? This was the intended way it was supposed to go. The PCB's overheating, don't worry about it. move forward, and there was this long list of things we need to fix when we have the time. It was getting longer and longer. And then we started going into something called DFM, design for manufacturing. Okay. And that's when you start to move from like 3D printing or CNC printing to, to mass manufacturing. So you go through the stage of DFM. And as we started that, there were all these mistakes that we need to correct before. The fact that the PCB is overheating is a problem, yeah, the possibility that it's going to burn is 1 to 5,000, but it could still burn. And you can't have this, you can't have a device out for mass manufacturing when you have these mistakes. So we decided to take a step to the side, not backwards, but to the side, and do what's called validation and verification. Slow down the progress, stop everything, start testing everything, make sure that everything works correctly, redesign the PCBs, redesign all the electronics in the device, so that we can go through DFM and we can go through and everything's going to work to spec, and most of the stuff is covered in the ISO 14385. This is how you develop products. And anyone from the outside looking in was like, dude, you're going to hit a wall. I knew we were going to hit a wall. It wasn't a big deal. I knew we were going to hit a wall. But a startup company has to be able to raise money. And this is one of the things that you were talking about, entrepreneurs. If they don't understand this, then they're not going to succeed. The only thing they have to think about is how to raise money. They don't have to think about, is the product working? Is it good? Market acceptance. You don't care about that. You only care about raising money. And so all the stuff that we were doing, pushing to progress and pushing and pushing and pushing, was because I needed to come with something bigger to be able to show the next investors. I don't care if we have to wait another year to come up with the product. That doesn't matter on the spread Excel. What is it, another 12 lines? Who gives a shit? You got to be able to show that the product is progressing, that it's working, and So we hit the wall, and we're spending 2023 doing verification and validation. So we have some pilot devices out in the market. So, as we're speaking here, people in Europe are urinating in our toilets, and we are gathering data. But we can't, we have such a huge demand for our product that we can't manufacture enough. So I stopped all the sales activity because it's putting a lot of noise into the system. Oh yeah, we're another 30,000 here, another 20,000 here. Well, we can't manufacture them. So, what are you promising these people? Me as a sales guy, I'm promising. Who cares? We'll be delayed. All right. Yeah. I've asked for forgiveness. So, so where we are as a company is we're taking a sidestep. We're slowing things down from a progress level, and we're focusing on everything that we need for DFM to be able to design and manufacture these devices for mass manufacturing. By the end of this year, we're supposed to have our molds developed. And once we have the molds developed, then the mass manufacturing can happen. We have to be able to manufacture some close to 1,000 units a day, so it's a huge ramp up. Mm-hmm. And it was a number of things that I underestimated when I first started the company. Was there were two things. There was, the regulatory, gross underestimation, and manufacturing was grossly underestimated. I've dealt with startups in the past, but they've always been software. Mm-hmm. And hardware, I just thought, okay, hardware, whatever. You just send this to the guy and say, I want 100 of these, and he gives them to you, but it's not, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Guy, to kind of comment on this, because so at Project MedTech, we mostly do, we have our podcast, our events, but mostly we have our consulting advisory group. And one of those aspects of that is our financial group. And something that I wasn't privy to either was the fact that raising capital and having enough to get through, when you think about raising capital, it's like, oh, I got to get through regulatory and clinical data and bring in a service provider like Galen and all these other things. What's often missed is, well, once we start selling stuff, we're fine. And it's like, there's a huge cash flow issue, for
Yes.
probably like a 6 month period, sometimes longer, that startups really need to be aware of, because depending on who you're selling to, you could get pretty strapped for cash just trying to manufacture product for what you have to sell. So I'm happy that you brought that up. I'm also happy you brought up the money thing. Because as an entrepreneur, that is your only responsibility. And I think sometimes people worry, well, things are going to get missed, and it's like, not really, because the other parts of your business are going to have to come along in order for you to be successful in raising that capital. And so, anyways, I like that comment as well. So yeah, so tell me about the cloud integration piece of all this and how important that data play was as well. I mean, obviously the hardware is incredibly important, but we're starting to see the medtech industry really shift towards a lot of companies wanting to be connected to the cloud and storing
Yeah,
data and getting data. So walk me through that piece a little bit, and then I'd love to get into Israel as well.
sure. So let me explain how our system works,
Yeah.
from a architectural perspective. So, so first of all, we're not a sensor business. We really try to. I say, so I come to a presentation with an investor and I show them the sensor, and then I go, yeah, we're not a sensor business. We're a data business. But no one's manufacturing the sensor, so we have to manufacture our own sensor. We're going to try and license this off as quick as we can so we don't have to deal with manufacturing. I don't want to have my company supply chain managers and logistic managers and inventory management. I don't want that. I want someone else to do that. We just process data. That's all we do. So our sensor actually connects to the Wi-Fi in the home.
Hmm.
That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a Wi-Fi chip on it, and it sends all the stuff up to the cloud through Wi-Fi. If the person doesn't have Wi-Fi in their toilet, first of all, I think men, because they're always on their phone on the toilet, that they would not have that in their house. But let's say if someone who doesn't have it, they would have to pair their phone, and then through the application, it will send the stuff up to the cloud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once it arrives to the cloud, now what we're actually sending to the cloud, just think about it, okay? Just think of an Excel file. It's got 2 rows, okay, or columns. Sorry. It's got frequency, what frequency of light, and what's the intensity. Okay. Now think about that Excel file that's growing at a rate of 350,000 lines a second. Okay. So it's just a lot of data that's being passed to the cloud. Now, initially when we started, we were using just pure AWS. We had our own cloud instance, and we were managing it and creating our own algorithms and the data scientists were using their own computers to do the analysis and stuff like that. And then it would send the models to the cloud, and then they would, and we spent a lot of time and money on being able to just the simple stuff of transferring the data, which seems like it should be a fairly simple thing. It's not, and doing integrity on the data and all that kind of stuff. It was kind of hairy, but we got it up and running. And then we decided we're going to do CE. Okay, so why do we decide CE is the European FDA? We decided to go after the European FDA because it's easier, it's faster. You can start in the European market. Until the 25th of May of 2022, there was a path of the CE was called IVD. That's the path, like a 510K, whatever. So it was a path, and the IVD was fairly easy to obtain. The thing was that the CEs changed it to something called MDR, and the MDR is a lot harder. It's much more similar to the FDA. Now we had to get everything in by the 25th of May 2022, or else, and then you're grandfathered in for like 8 years to do the MDR.
Right.
But you got to get the files in time, and it was hectic to get that done. And so when we decided that we're going to do this CE, again, I'm like, okay, fine, we'll do the CE. And they're like, yeah, but to do the CE, you have to get ISO 14385. Okay, well, how hard could that be? Well, you have to develop a QMS system, a quality management system. Okay, do it, but then it's like, well, it's not that easy, and so we got into this, and then all the issues of data compliance kind of fell into the picture, so I know what GDPR is. I knew GDPR. I know what HIPAA is. I've dealt with compliance issues. I've dealt with QMS systems in the past as well, and then I think it was a LinkedIn message, if I'm not mistaken, that Chris sent me, the CEO of Galen. And it was like, hey, we've got this thing, maybe we should have a call, and I like to be responsive. So I'm like, all right, whatever, fine, and he starts talking to me, and it was just that perfect timing, because had he had called 2 months before, I would have been like, forget, we don't need these things, But because I was dealing with these issues, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, this QMS sucks and CE sucks, and all these things really are heavy amounts of work. I was listening. I was like, well, wait a minute. That means that all the stuff that we're trying to do on our AWS, our instance is already built into this platform. So now I just have to integrate with the platform, which is a lot easier than to build it from scratch on the AWS platform. And we were using external consultants. They were all against it. No, you shouldn't use it. You're gonna get locked in, and all the consulting kind of stuff. And I was like, well, wait a minute, no, and I pushed it pretty hard. And we actually looked in at the same time. We were approached by another an Israeli company that was doing a type of Galen kind of I don't remember their name right now, a type of Galen installation instance. And so we were talking with them as well. And Galen had their model was much better, much more aligned with where we were heading. I think that the Israeli guys were thinking, yeah, maybe 1,000, 2,000 devices or something like that, so there was kind of like these, you start cheap and then we get more expensive as you go up, and Galen had a different approach, not that you start expensive, but the way that they built the growth, because we're thinking in the millions, so we're thinking lots, and I'm sure that's the first time you're hearing from an entrepreneur that they're thinking millions, right? But we're thinking large scale, and Galen came in a lot better, pricing model than this other company that would leave us hanging in some risk that we didn't want to take. So from my perspective, what Galen is supplying us is, we have there's a lot of places where our data is sent to. It's not we send it just to an app and that's it, So we send it to hospital, we send it to insurance companies, we send it, and it's a lot of data transfer protocols that we need to, either develop ourselves or have this out of the box solution that provides us kind of flexibility on how, when, where we send the data to. So that's the one side. The other side is the FDA and HIPAA compliance, which, just talking on the most basics thing. If we had to start doing penetration testing on our AWS instance, that's $100,000 a year just to do that, right? I don't want to, because then we have to have a data security group that's doing data security on our instance. We are focused on detecting molecules in urine. That's it. Anything that's not in our core focus, we don't deal with. We don't want to deal with. We outsource. And that, but if we outsource now security on our cloud, there's no end to that you're going to pay for that. And so Galen was a really good solution for us because it really answered a lot of this, build versus buy thing. We don't want to build it. We're making our device. We're making a $1.5 million spectrometer for $50 because we're buying off the shelf components. I don't want to build anything. Let someone else. They're better at it.
Yeah. I love the focus there. Right. You can continue in a second here, but just to focus of, again, focusing on the problem and then eventually how you're going to solve that problem. And I think that's why, at the very beginning of this, I talk about Galen data. And their last line is they enable MedTech companies to remain
Not
MedTech companies.
Yeah, I like that because that's exactly what it is, you know. And I had a fight with everyone in the group. You know, nothing goes without a fight, right?
Yep.
But because we've already put in all this effort, we already know this, we're getting good at it, stuff like that. And I'm like, no, let's. And was the onboarding simple process that we just hit next, 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 and we're onboarded? No, it didn't
Hmm.
go as easy as that. But we really had the Galen people with us through that onboarding process.
Yep.
I remember our programmers. So we only have one programmer in the company. And he goes, "Yeah, they made it super complicated. It's really dumb. They have this and this and this and this." And then he sat with the Galen people for a few hours, and he goes, "No, it's actually really smart. They really thought about this thoroughly,
Hmm.
and they the reason is," and then he went into all these reasons, and it was like, wow, this is a really well thought out platform. It's not just a bunch of people putting something simple together.
Yep. Yeah, Guy, the other thing I'll add just from my experience, before I started Project MedTech, I was working for CROs in the medical device space and on that
Mhm.
service side of things. And, a lot of times there's a mentality that, in order to have someone who it's the hire someone mentality of, well, I got to bring them onto the team full time. That means, they're really focused on what we're doing. And I've always fallen on the opposite side of that. Of it's okay to fractionalize, and a lot of times people will push back and say, well, but the service providers aren't part of the team. And what I push back on our startups with is it's your duty as a leader of the company to make them feel a part of your team because they want to feel a part of your team.
Right.
Um, and it's something special when that happens, right? Is when you can get those service providers to come in, be a part of your team. They know their role. Their role is to get you from this step to this step. Um, and so, I think that that's a big piece of it as well. Is most of the service providers I know are happy to be a part of the team as long as you let them in and you kind of
Yeah.
breed
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
What am I thinking of here? Culture. Um, but okay, very good. So tell me about is Israel. You brought this up at the beginning. I've This is a topic almost every time I've had someone on from Israel on our podcast series, and every time I ask them, why is Israel so great? Why do startups thrive there? Every answer is always different. Um, but they're similar, which is a good thing, right? Because it means they're doing something right in the ecosystem. Generally, when that happens, it's because people are picking on their favorite part of the ecosystem. And I look at it and go, wow, there's like every time I talk to someone, they have a different favorite part of the ecosystem. People will bring up the
Right.
military. The newest one I got was literally at a panel a couple weeks ago where the guy had mentioned, he's like, look, he's like, the fact of the matter is every once in a while you are in a war zone. Theoretically, and he's like we have it does something a little different for innovation, and I hadn't really thought of that before. And he said it kind of kiddingly but also pretty serious. And so there's always different reasons why, but you brought up the size of Israel, right? It's physically it's about the size of New Jersey, which is a small state in the U.S. And from a number of people, I think it's between 8 and 10 million, maybe
Hey.
11, 8 million.
No.
Yeah. And so, but the startups and the technology that come out of there are fantastic. So tell me a little bit about the ecosystem, uh, why there seems to be so many great startups there. Curious on your thoughts there.
Okay. So I've got a whole theory, but I'm not gonna go through it. What I'm actually gonna speak about is um, this particular company. Okay, and what aspect did we use from the Israeli ecosystem? I'm not gonna explain why Israel has this innovative thinking.
Hmm.
Uh, look, I've lived in a lot of places. So I've lived in Sydney, I've lived in Chicago and New York, San Francisco, London,
Yeah.
uh, Israel is really, really different. Fundamentally people think differently here. They
Mhm.
fundamentally think different. And I think that there's a reason. I think it's an inert thing that happens, but I'm going to leave that aside. What we ended up doing. So here I had this great idea and a really, really cool PowerPoint, and I worked at making a prototype. Okay. And the prototype, it was bullshit. Okay. But I put it in a cute little toilet, like a little baby toilet. Okay. I can't even stress the importance, and I don't know if there's entrepreneurs on the phone on the line, but the importance of having something cute when you present, you know. And here I come with this toilet, and then we put this little prototype thing inside. Okay, the prototype didn't work. It didn't really show anything. It just showed that if you measure fast enough, you can see what's noise and what's signal. That was pretty much it, you know. Um, and I was like, all right, let's go. So, one of the things that's really lucky about me is I really like raising money. Like that's really fun for me, you know, more than anything else. I really like raising money. So it's good to have that kind of CEO because that's what he's going to be doing for the next 5 years, Um, and we finally found that the path forward is through an organization here in Israel called the Israeli Innovation Authority. Okay, the Israel Innovation Authority is a government body, and they'll only fund projects that have a very, very complicated IP. Okay, that you're going to struggle to actually get it to work. So they only fund high risk startups, you know. And I mean, if you have like a great idea and you're gonna have the best thing in the world, but there's not a lot of IP in it, they're not going to fund you. It's got to be something that's extremely hard to do, you know. And so we started as what's called an incubated company. An incubation company here in Israel is when you get the IIA. There's a form and there's all that kind of stuff and an interview and then the IIA puts in they give you it was about $1 million, okay, a little bit less than $1 million, and they put in 85%, and then a VC matches the other 15%. Okay, so the good news is that you don't have to out of pocket anything. It's 100% financed from the get go. The bad news is the way the structure is built is that the VC put in 15%, but they take equity as if they brought in the whole amount. Okay. So it takes a while to overcome the low valuation that they give you and then the big bite that they take from that low valuation. So it took a few months to kind of like stop cursing everyone there and just be like, okay, fine, get over it,
Yeah.
But there was that. And that got us started, and it gave us 2 years. It was me and two other guys. I extremely nerded out, and it was for the first time in my life. It was actually the most enjoyable 2 years of my whole career, were the 2 years where I was a scientist, and I absolutely loved it. Like I get nerdy when it comes to math. I mean, our whole system is nothing but math. When it comes to that, I get super nerdy and really, really enjoyed it. And we started cranking out this device. The incubator, the VC that's part of that incubator, also has one of their LPs is one of the largest insurance companies in Israel. And so when we finally showed that we can actually detect protein in urine as it falls, right? That took us about 1.5 years to do. We got the insurance company on board, okay, because they've been following us the whole time, and they became our lead investor in our next rounds. because they absolutely see where this is headed. They absolutely believe in the technology. They absolutely believe in what we're doing. And they want to be, they want first bids on the product, and they're going to want exclusivity and all those kind of things. So we'll obviously negotiate that in the future. But the system here is small. So you have these kind of, interlinks between people and organizations that's kind of easy to, uncover. The other thing that I did when I first started the company is I looked at the way startups work, because I was, just before I started this company, I signed up to be a mentor for some acceleration program, and just to see what that was about. And then I noticed that these acceleration programs are really, really good. Like if you're willing to take from it, they're really good. But you have to. And so I decided when I started this company, I'm going to sign up for these acceleration programs all over the place, and I did. And then we were in IBM, and we were in Google, and we were in Equivia, and from your CRO days, you must know IQVIA.
Yep.
Abbott, and I'm just signing up to all these acceleration programs. They're just giving us, first of all, they usually offer free food, which is awesome. When you have face to face, there's always free food. That's good. But they are for contacts, So I pitched Olive to like 9 different VPs in Google, and the reason that happened was because when they asked me, they interviewed me. They're like, "Look, you have a lot of experience in this. What are you trying to get out of this acceleration program?" So, and here's a word in Hebrew. It's called chutzpah. Okay, chutzpah. Chutzpah means the audacity. So I gave a real kind of chutzpah answer when they asked me why I want to do the Google program, and I said to them, the reason I want to do the Google program is because I believe Google is going to buy my company in 2 years, and I want you guys to get to know me. And I thought that's it. They're not going to accept me, but they did. And I did. And I just networked through Google like crazy, and started that, because it's going to be a long process. But that's what startups are today. Everyone wants to help. Everyone wants to help, and you got to take that, because there's only so much that and that you could be good at. And you got to rely on other people and their experiences to help you through all the stuff, the ISO 13485. Who even knew what that was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. So final 7 minutes. If people have questions, feel free to drop them in. But Guy, from your perspective, what's next?
So one of the fights I get into always with my company is that they're always saying, no, we can't do that. And I'm like, why can't we do it? Because we don't know how to do that. I'm like, we don't know how to do it now, but in 8 months we will, in 9 months we will, and there's this dissonance between me and everyone else. I can't look at now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what now is, my head is always 8 to 12 months ahead. That's where I live. So I'm selling the product as if we're already manufacturing them, because I'm there. Of course we can manufacture. We'll have you up in 2024. Who cares?
Yeah.
So from my perspective, the biggest hurdle that we're gonna have to overcome in 2023 is being able to mass manufacture. Okay, that's our biggest hurdle. Once we can do that, we're going to be in revenue, we're going to be in profitability, and all those great things, So that's what the remainder of this year is, and I'm staying really, really far away from the development team. They don't let me come to the office anymore. Stay away, do your fundraising thing, and leave us alone. And I hope that by the beginning of 2024, we're mass manufacturing and selling this stuff like crazy.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I guess in closing, is there any other major, maybe one other major lesson you've kind of learned so far? You sprinkled in a bunch along the way, but was there another one that kind of stood out to you, or that you wanted to share with the audience?
Learn to accept rejection.
Okay.
You got to bounce back from rejection like that.
Yeah.
And when I first started, it probably took me about 2 or 3 days to get over rejection. Now, by the time I finish the email, I'm already thinking those stupid idiots are going to be sorry. I'm going to put them on my shaming list, and then I move forward. You're going to get rejected. Not just investors. Your technology is going to reject you.
Mm-hmm.
Your suppliers are going to reject you. Your employees are going to reject you. Everyone freaking rejects you all the time. And you've got to bounce back quick from it. I
Yeah.
think if anything, that's what because if you dwell in it, someone is going to say yes. You just got to believe that someone's going to say yes. It's just a numbers game. Get out there, talk to as many people as you can. I pitch 20 times a day. I pitch the lady at the supermarket. I pitch the cleaning guy. I'm always pitching.
Yeah.
And it's just a numbers game. Someone's going to say yes, and they do, and it's proven. And you never know where it's going to come from. It always comes from the weirdest place.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
my target, my star. At the end, it came from somewhere completely different.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome advice, and I love that it's not just with investors, because that is, people always talk about, oh, just worry about rejection, and with investors, and it's like you're going to get rejected everywhere. So I'm glad you brought that up. We did get one question from the audience. Do you see your product line evolving where the connectivity to the cloud is necessary for monitoring, but the analytics is done at the edge or gateways? And put in parentheses phone.
That's a good question. Okay. The reason we're not doing it on the edge is because we want to keep the sensor cheap. Okay. If we want to do it on an edge, the chip that we would need would be at least $100. The chip that we're using is $4. Okay. So the answer to the question is yes. In the future, is, as chip prices will go down. They always do, and we'll be able to put that on the edge. It's much better for us to do that. There's a lot of gains that we have by doing that. There will always be connectivity to the cloud because it gets complicated on how you syndicate the data from there on. But for sure, we want to go down that path.
Cool. All right, Guy. I really appreciate you donating your time today and sharing your background, your history, what you've learned, your insights, your knowledge. It's all been super helpful. For those who are still listening in, again, you'll be sent a recording of this. You can always go back and watch it further. We have contact information on there for Galen Data and Guy as well, if you want to connect with him. Also, apparently from Guy's story, he's also active on LinkedIn, so there's another good place to connect with him and follow him there. But thank you so much for tuning in today, and everyone for listening. We'll have more information on the June webinar series shortly. And Guy, thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure. And have a good day there.